That's a black slide. That's not that's the slide we want. How many of you are familiar with the company Answer, A-N-S-E-R? I love having this moment. Do you know that they are the single largest contractor in the entire COVID terrorism campaign? Yeah, you do now, and guess what you're responsible for now? The truth. You are responsible for this truth because it turns out that the companies on the right that you think are the ones running this show are in fact the front. Now, you know what a front organization is? They're the ones that are supposed to take the flak and take the heat. The ones on the left are the ones that actually got the money. Operation Warp Speed went to Answer. You didn't know that because you were told by the media that it went to Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, all that kind of stuff. That's not true. The prime contract of Operation Warp Speed went through Answer, a company none of you heard of. And you didn't hear about them because the contract that was signed with ATI, a company based in South Carolina, a company whose history has been government defense contracts for the purpose of propaganda. I wish I made that up. The prime contractor selected to run Operation Warp Speed was a propaganda expert for the U.S. Department of Defense. Now, cunningly, the reason why they were selected is for the following reason. And listen carefully, because this is getting really thick really fast, and I have to deliver it because I got 28 minutes and 9 seconds left, and I got a long way to go. Here's the problem. The problem is we have a world in which there's things under the 1986 Act and under the 2005 PrEP Act that actually shield manufacturers from liability. But inside of the 1986 Act and inside the 2005 PrEP Act, there's a tiny little clause problem, which is if any actions taken to declare a state of emergency are part of a willful misconduct or a criminal felony conspiracy, the liability shield gets pierced and the manufacturers of the drugs are liable for every injury and every death. Listen, they're liable for every injury and every death. So why on earth did you think that they ran Operation Warp Speed through a cover company? Think back to Bhopal, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody remember American Cyanamid, any of the great old companies, those wonderful days when we killed hundreds of thousands of people in India? Remember those? Remember those heady days of chemical corporations that would set up holding companies that actually did the asbestos deals so that when somebody actually got injured and died and got sued, they'd bankrupt the shell company. That's what Answer is. Answer is the way for the federal government never to be liable for the criminal conspiracy they know they ran. They are now one of the top 10 federal contractors in history, below Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and all those guys. Those names you know. You don't know Answer. The single company that by COVID rose the highest rank rise in the history of federal contracting, the highest single year rise ever, was Answer. And none of you know who they are. They're the target, and we're not talking about the target. We're actually aiming for the decoys and wondering why no ducks are on the table. I was hoping I could get a Second Amendment laugh out of that one. You guys are pathetic. Wake up. Let's go. I could have said moose, and I could have at least gotten the Montana people on board. Answer Corporation. They're the ones running Operation Warp Speed, and they've been set up to shield these manufacturers from ever taking the financial liability for their willful misconduct. And one day, everybody's going to go, let's go sue Pfizer, let's go sue everybody else. And the only problem is, when we go to sue them, they're going to go, hey, it wasn't us. And they're right. And all of us were asleep. And I'm talking to an awoke crowd here, and all of you were asleep. Don't tell me you're awake if you're still sleeping. Because if you didn't know who Answer is, you're still asleep. It gets worse. Forrs Marsh. Anybody know Forrs Marsh? Another empty, crowded room. You know who Forrs Marsh is? They're the branding agency that branded COVID. They're the ones that make sure that we find hospitals that are overrun with people. And they're the ones that find kids that died of COVID right before the FDA needs to vote on giving kids injections. They're the ones that go around the world making sure that every message is always the same. We will not return to normal until we have a vaccine. Thank you, Justin Trudeau. Where'd you get the script? From Forrs Marsh. And how many of you knew that? None of you.